The biggest opportunities are the ones that fix today's friction points, not the ones that sound, best on a stage. So I usually just start with a question, what's manual or messy or missing in your day-to-day, or ask them about their key goals and what's keeping them from hitting those goals. And that's where AI can shine. For most community banks, we're talking about things like summarizing calls or cleaning up a loan pipeline or identifying exceptions in documents, automating reports that someone's still pulling manually every morning. So when you solve those, a couple things happen. It's about changing the culture from we're too small for this to, hey, what else can we fix? I hope I've shown that you can lead in this space by being exactly who you are. For so many of us, especially women, especially in tech-heavy spaces, there's pressure to perform a version of leadership that mirrors the room that you're in. I want my legacy to be about not doing that and about showing up fully, clearly, and without apology, because your voice, your real voice, is the one that people will truly remember. For future leaders, don't shrink yourself to fit the room. Be the one who changes it.
Welcome to Beyond Brilliance. I'm Jay. With me is my co-host Rahul. Today we are diving into something that's very close to my heart. How do you scale innovation without losing your soul?
That's right, Jay, and we've got the perfect guest to explore this with us. Deb Barnes recently left her role as head of bank data management at USAA, a $160 billion institution, to start her own firm, Stellara Strategy. But here's what's fascinating. She's not chasing Silicon Valley startups or Fortune 500 giants. She's focusing on community banks.
Which honestly, when I first heard, I thought, why? I'm like, why is she going from a big corporation to starting her own venture, right? But then when I dug a little bit more, I found out that it made a lot of sense. She's got over 20 years of experience in data, AI, and a doctoral degree in advanced analytics, and has driven close to 50 million in AI-powered savings. What really caught my attention is she's thinking about transformation, and she's thinking about this transformation to not the Wall Street, but to the Main Street.
Exactly. Deb, welcome to Beyond Brilliance.
Hello, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with the obvious question. You had a pretty established role at USAA. What inspired you to leave big banking and start your own firm?
Well, it was actually a surprise to me that I was going to leave. My role, unfortunately, was eliminated during, a round of reorganization. And while that was tough, I poured a lot into my team and our transformation work. It also gave me that rare opportunity to stop and ask, what do I want to do next? So I took a step back and I realized that the parts of my work that I loved most were the ones where I got to build, solve, and coach. So I wanted to do more of that. And I wanted to do it in a way that was faster and more creative and more personal than what was possible inside a huge institution. That's when I started thinking about launching Stellara. I had seen firsthand how smaller banks and credit unions were being left behind in the AI and data conversation. And they serve real people with complex needs, but they don't always have access to the modern tools or expertise. And I knew I could help change that. So I built Stellara to bring the same level of strategy, governance, and innovation I'd led inside the enterprise, but tailored to community institutions. Places that care deeply about trust and relationships, and where transformation needs to be practical and not perfect. And personally, I was ready to create something that reflected my values, a business that could scale with heart.
That's such an interesting pivot from serving massive institutions to focusing on community banks. Sounds like you're almost going against conventional wisdom here. So what's the difference between serving these community institutions compared to something larger like USAA?
Everything is so much more personal. We have to think through the way change happens. Community banks aren't chasing market share. One of the things many of the leaders have said to me is, this is Main Street, not Wall Street. They don't see themselves as competitors with the big banks. They see themselves as there to truly serve the communities that they're in. How do they help that next small business owner get their business off the ground? How do they get a member home, get their mortgage closed, and get them a part of the community through home ownership? So it's so personal. Each bank Each leader that I've spoken with, they have their own cause from wanting to solve generational poverty, like as a part of their mission and helping youth have good access to financial programs all the way to, getting people home, like I said before. So it's so different because the heartstrings are really there. It's a human interest story, but also they need really practical solutions. They don't want to wait, years. We're going to do this in a couple months instead of a couple years. So I think that practicality and coming to them with solutions that are bite-sized that they can try out is really key.
Love that. Love what you said. Transformation needs to be practical, not perfect. That feels like it captures something important about how change actually happens in the real world.
That's true, Rahul. Let's get practical here, Deb, right? I imagine when you walk into the community bank, they might be intimidated by all the years of experience you have, all the AI hype they're hearing about. And what are some of the most immediate ways AI can help a regional and a community bank without overwhelming them with a lot of technical jargon?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest opportunities are the ones that fix today's friction points, not the ones that sound, best on a stage. So I usually just start with a question, what's manual or messy or missing in your day to day, or ask them about their key goals and what's keeping them from hitting those goals. And that's where AI can shine. For most community banks, we're talking about things like summarizing calls or cleaning up a loan pipeline or identifying exceptions in documents, automating reports that someone's still pulling manually every morning. These are real problems that burn hours and wear teams out, and they're perfect candidates for lightweight automation and AI solutions. So when you solve those, a couple things happen. People get time back and they start to believe in what's possible. That belief starts to create momentum where it's not just about the automation, it's about changing the culture from we're too small for this to hey, what else can we fix? So that's really the key to getting them moving forward.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. You're building confidence by taking away the complexity. I imagine the assessment process is crucial here, right? So, how do you ensure that the banks assess their AI readiness without all the jargon and the fear that comes along with it?
Yeah, I don't focus on what I bring, honestly. I focus on what they do. So that means really starting with their work, their processes, pain points, and then showing what AI would look like in that context. And so I don't come in talking about algorithms or infrastructure. I walk them through tangible examples. Here's how this could look for your loan ops team. Here's how your call center might use this. And here's how you can change the way you review daily reports. We get into the details of some of how do we need to implement it, but I really just focus on here's what I'm going to need from you, not here's all the things I'm going to do to make it happen. I let that be our behind the scenes magic in a lot of ways. But once they can see it, not just understand it, but visualize it, they start to engage. For example, just this last week, a business partner of mine, we're planning to put in a nudge system, so to speak, for their loan processors. And she's like, well, what is that going to look like? How are they going to see it? I said, oh, we're just going to send them an email. We're going to send them an email with some of the key things going on in the loans they're processing. And I mocked it up for her and I said, this is what it would look like. And she's like, oh, okay. So it's not, again, it's a little fear, like, how are they going to know what to do? And then, oh, it's an email. Okay, that's easy. We can work with that, right? So I think continuing to go back to we're just integrating into your bot process really helps people get over their initial concerns or see how we can mitigate the risks.
Got it. And that's just brilliant, right? Making it more concrete than being conceptual.
Right.
And I think you're meeting them where they are instead of where you think they should be. That's pretty fascinating.
So let's talk about C-suite dynamics. Deb, with your background, you've been in those high-stakes rooms where big decisions get made. You've been in rooms where risk, tech, and strategy intersect. What's the hardest part about getting the alignment at that executive level?
Yeah, the hardest part is that everyone is in fact right from their point of view, which may be different from each other, right? The risk leader is focused on protection. The tech leader is thinking about scale and stability. The business leader wants speed and outcomes, and they're all valid, but they're not always speaking the same language or even looking at the same problem through the same lens. So my role often becomes that of a translator and connector. I help each leader see the trade-offs and value through the lens of the other. I have a background in risk management as well, so it helps me speak all the language, tech, business, and data together. Why does governance support innovation? Why does transparency accelerate trust? And why sometimes the fastest way forward is through alignment, not velocity. So you don't get alignment by demanding agreement. You get it by creating a shared understanding. That starts with trust. And usually for me, that starts with listening. Always back to listening with me. That's what you'll hear.
Absolutely. Trust seems to be a recurring theme in your approach. That must be especially important when you're dealing with both internal stakeholders and external regulators. So, how do you build trust with both regulators and business leaders?
Yeah, it's absolutely about consistency. You build trust the same way you maintain it, by showing up the same way every time. If I say we're going to fix something, I follow through. If I don't have an answer, I say that and I tell them when I will. The level of clarity goes a long way in rooms where the stakes are high and everyone's watching for signals. So with regulators, that means no spin, just facts, accountability, and a clear plan. With business leaders, it means anchoring the data story in what they care about: growth, efficiency, risk reduction. Trust isn't built in a big reveal, it's built in the way you manage tension, the way you handle bad news, and the way you advocate when it's not easy.
Right, that consistency piece is so important. Sounds like you're playing the long game rather than trying to impress in the moment. So, what makes a great CDAO today, and what separates that from a good one?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I mean, we've been watching this role for about a decade now and how it evolves. So in my opinion, a good, underline good, CDAO delivers tools, dashboards, and platforms. A great one drives business transformation. So the difference is in mindset. A great CDO doesn't just build a capability, they change conversations. They help the organization see new possibilities, make better decisions, become more data fluent over time. They also know how to balance innovation with integrity. It's not just about pushing AI forward, but it's about knowing when to slow down, bring in risk partners, and make sure what you're building is scalable and responsible. So at the end of the day, a great CDAO helps everyone else be great at their jobs because they've made the data accessible, the insights meaningful, and the strategy connected.
Love that distinction. Building capabilities versus driving transformation. That's about changing how people think. Now, that's what tools are used for.
Yeah, thanks, Deb, for that. And I want to talk something personal here. I want to talk about this topic where we want to address women in leadership. So, Deb, I want to shift something personal, right? You are leading in AI and data, and the spaces that you're leading is not known for a great deal of gender diversity. We've gone into those conferences, we've seen the outsized number of men to women. So, what role do mentors and allies play in terms of lifting more women into AI and data leadership?
Yeah, it's a massive role, really important. But in so many ways, it's not informal mentorships. Some of the most pivotal moments in my own career came from people, who weren't coaching me, giving a big grand opportunity, but they pushed me just a little. They'd say, "Hey, you're ready for this," going in from the board for the first time. "You're ready for this. You got this." Or the text message that comes across in the middle of the meeting that says, "You're holding back. Say what you're thinking," right? From a colleague who knows you well. And allies, that matters just as much. So, especially in those rooms where you're the only in the room, allies can advocate or amplify or sometimes just not talk over you. And when someone repeats your idea and gets credit for it, which it has happened a handful of times, and that's probably true for everyone, an ally can be someone that says, "Yes, that's what Deb just said a few minutes ago," and really, reopens that door without it being, in your face to anybody else. So it seems small, but it changes the power dynamics. And I think that kind of support, especially for me, has built confidence and made me comfortable with more visibility.
Yeah. And those moments of recognition and advocacy can be so powerful. So, for women who are early in their careers and looking into stepping into leadership roles, what would your advice be for those aspiring women leaders in the space of AI and data?
Yeah, I would say don't wait until you're quote air quotes ready to lead. In fact, if you're waiting to feel ready, you'll wait too long for sure. I have certainly made that mistake more than once of waiting too long to kind of take that step forward. I would say yes before you have it all figured out. It's okay to be figuring it out as you go. And step into that room even when you feel underqualified. I mean, the truth is probably we are all our harshest critic, and what you have to say has value, and starting to say it will just help you practice and become better at that over time. Also, find your people. Leadership can feel lonely, especially the more senior you get in an organization, but it doesn't have to be. Build your circle, ask for feedback, offer it to others, be visible and be generous. Those combinations open doors, not just for you, but for women, coming up behind you.
Got it. That's such important advice, Deb. Thanks for that. About you talked about not asking for permission, not being ready to step in. It sounds like you're advocating for a kind of courageous authenticity, if I will want to
Yeah, I mean,
term.
that's so great. I'm glad you mentioned authenticity as well. You got to be yourself. You got to be true to yourself. I'll share, early in my career as a leader, I had just had my first kiddos. I was uncomfortable at work, even saying things like, I have to go pick up my kid from daycare. That felt like I was going to be judged for not being serious. And as a leader now, I make sure to make that not an issue, right? It's like, okay, if you got kids to pick up, that's fine. We'll catch up on this later or tomorrow morning. Or even when I have parents who are coming back from, having their first kid, checking in with them on like, how's your schedule? What's life like? Making those topics, things that can be talked about out in the open. It's hard to be a truly different version of yourself at work. So as much as you can truly be yourself, do. And if you can't, really think about why, what's holding you back. And maybe that's the thing to go talk to a mentor about for a little while. Why is that, why are you wanting to hold back a part of yourself?
Yeah, that's great. Actually, bringing your authentic self is always a door for success. And I've
Mhm.
seen personally in my life as well. Thank you for that.
That's great to hear. Now let's talk about where things are headed. You've mentioned fractional leadership as part of your model. You've spoken about the rise of fractional leadership. Why do you think that model is the future?
Yeah. So when I started becoming interested in the community banking space, it's clear that these organizations don't need a full-time role, but they still need the insights and they still need the knowledge, and access to that knowledge. So not everyone needs to hire that full-time CDAO in order to make progress, but they need strategy, they need structure, and that fractional model gives them access, to seasoned leaders without that long-term overhead. And it turns out, there's a lot of overhead with the CDAO in place. So for leaders like me, it means getting to solve real problems, at scale across multiple organizations with fresh energy every time. So that's exciting for the why would you want to be a fractional leader? It's especially powerful in this space that I talked about earlier with the community banks and mid-sized companies. They're navigating that regulation, AI, tech decisions, but without 10 layers of support. So a fractional leader can come in, build clarity, and help drive change, and set foundation for internal teams to carry it forward. It's not a workaround, it's a win-win, when done right.
On that fractional story, Deb, I want to add something, right? I've also seen one of the other speakers in one of our episodes. She's Bhavani Raman. She talked about having fractional CFOs helping her to balance her books because she's a startup founder and she doesn't need a CFO yet, right? She's at a size where a fractional CFO will come in and help her out in terms of balancing books, having that financial hygiene in a startup company. So I think the rise of fractional roles are going to keep proliferating, and I think you've hit on the nail on the head, right? That fractional leadership for community banks can catapult them to greater success, to still feel like access to people like you is going to make a lot of difference in their journeys. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, thanks. And I hope to make that kind of impact. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll see how it goes over the next year or so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Accessing the expertise without the overhead. Now, looking at the bigger picture across industries, what's one big opportunity and one big risk that you see the way AI is being adopted across industries?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to this before when we were talking about community banks, but there's a big opportunity to use AI to reclaim time. For customers, employees, leaders, there's just so much potential to reduce noise, speed up decision making, and then elevate the work that actually matters. But the biggest risk is rushing in without a plan. And there's a lot of pressure to do something with Gen AI, right? I think probably every leader in every organization in the entire world has some pressure, some assignment to do something with Gen AI. And so I worry that companies are prioritizing that headline over outcomes, or worse, launching solutions that aren't governed or explainable or aligned with business needs, right? Tech for tech's sake is not really going to help move the business forward. So you can't afford to bolt AI onto bad data or broken processes, and you definitely can't treat trust like an afterthought. At a conference I was at recently, there was a lot of conversation about data and data management. And one of the phrases we shared was, it used to be garbage in, garbage out. And now with generative AI, it's, excuse me, garbage in, garbage squared. So, the potential negative impact with generative AI to be negative can really swarm up fast. And so I think it's important that organizations, they'll win because they were intentional with their innovation, where AI isn't just fast, but it's thoughtful as well.
Absolutely. The phrase, pair innovation with intentionality really captures the balance you're talking about. It's not just about speed, it's about being deliberate.
All right, Deb, we always end with this question. I'm curious to hear your take also. How do you finish this sentence for me? The future of data and AI belongs to those who.
Okay, so the future of data and AI will belong to those who are probably robots, or maybe the Gen AI prompt engineers who finally get to call themselves creatives. But seriously, the future of data and AI will belong to those who can earn trust before they deploy tech. I mean, how many times have I said the word trust today? We can go back and do a frequency count, but the tools will keep changing, but trust is the constant. If people don't believe in the data, the insight, or the intention behind the automation, it won't stick. It won't be adopted. And it also won't stick. Leaders who win in this space will be the ones who lead with that credibility, just enough humility to ask the right questions before rushing to solutions.
That's very, very well said. Trust as a constant while everything else changes. One final question. What legacy do you hope your work leaves behind for customers, for banks, and for future leaders?
That's a great question. I hope I've shown that you can lead in this space by being exactly who you are. For so many of us, especially women, especially in tech heavy spaces, there's pressure to perform a version of leadership that mirrors the room that you're in. I want my legacy to be about not doing that and about showing up fully, clearly, and without apology, because your voice, your real voice, is the one that people will truly remember. For customers, I want to leave behind systems that feel intuitive, helpful, and human, even when they're powered by AI. And for banks, I want to be remembered as someone who helped modernize the right way, strategically, thoughtfully, and without compromising what made them trusted to begin with. For future leaders, don't shrink yourself to fit the room, be the one who changes it.
Wow, that's exactly the kind of wisdom we were loving to share within our podcast. So thank you so much for that. Don't shrink yourself to fit the room, be the one that actually changes it. That's quite powerful.
Deb Barnes, everyone, founder and CEO of Stellara Strategy, helping community banks scale with soul. Deb, where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. We also have stellarastrategy.com. So those are the main places. I guess we can provide some links below.
Thanks for joining us, Deb. This conversation perfectly captures what Beyond Brilliance is all about. It's about being smart, it's about being intentional, it's being human, it's being brave, and to pack yourself at all cost. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a really great experience.
And for our listeners, remember that true brilliance comes from authentic leadership and thoughtful innovation. We'll see you next time on Beyond Brilliance.